Welcome to the Mission Files. This is a weekly stream where, hello, Ippy Looney is looking back as if to say, just listening. Okay, that's all right. That's all right. It's it's a sign that I have a commanding voice. It's my natural stage presence, commanding attention. The Mission Files is a weekly stream where we get together and we work on something for the Jump Rangers tabletop role playing game. And since the beginning of this stream, it's mostly been one-shot missions, and that's what we're going to be working on this week. And it's probably going to be another case where it takes us a couple of weeks to actually get it done. But it's not always one-shot missions. Sometimes I just want to do other things. But this week we're doing a mission. So we're going to bring up our handy-dandy mission workspace here. So the first thing we're going to talk through, just briefly, is the format, because running a tabletop role-playing game in one night is a little bit foolhardy. It doesn't work most of the time. People don't always get the whole story in just one session. I'm going to turn this over so you can see the toys, because we're talking about fun things, so there should be toys in the background. People get distracted when you're running a tabletop role-playing game. They get sidetracked, and whatever plot you thought was going to take 3 or 4 hours to get through is probably going to take 6 hours, realistically. So you can't count on anything but the most basic, simple, straightforward story to get you through an evening of gameplay in Jump Rangers or any other tabletop role-playing game. Especially when people are just learning a new game, but even with seasoned players, it doesn't move as fast as you want. So we have 4 scenes in any evening of gameplay. The first scene, if you're running a one-shot, is the scene where the players find out what the story's about. Sometimes that means that some NPC, some non-player character, approaches the players and asks for their help with a specific problem. Sometimes it means following up on something that one of the players actually wanted to do from a previous session. But in any event, you have to establish, there has to be a beginning to the story. So scene 1 is when everybody finds out what they're doing and makes their preparations to do it. Scene 4 should be a wind down scene where everybody gets to come down off of the high of whatever session you've played. So what that means is you really only have 2 scenes to tell your story. You're going to give your players rewards and things, and or have them talk about the consequences of their actions with authority figures or whatever the case may be. All that stuff, all the thank yous and congratulations, and that's all scene 4. So scene 2 and scene 3 are your story. That's all you get. Scene 2 is when the characters set up for the thing that they're doing, and scene 3 is the thing where they pay it off and follow through on their plan. That's all you have time for in one evening of role playing. So over here we have a ready-made sheet with all the things that we're going to need to build our evening one-shot. The big picture is kind of the global Jump Rangers context of the story that we're telling. It's the things that maybe the characters already know about the universe and how this story fits into, in general, what's happening in Jump Rangers. If there's any context that is required to make the story make sense as a Jump Ranger story, that's where it goes. And then setting up the story is where we discuss specifically the relationships that the characters may have going into the story. It's the givens, right? If someone's going to be telling these characters what to do, and if these heroes have never played Jump Rangers before, then just tell them in the setup of the story why the character that's talking to them is important. Establish the authority of that character as a given, so that they understand why this person's worth listening to. You're not necessarily going to force them to do what this person says, but if they would be inclined to do that, tell them so and tell them why. before the story begins. And maybe the characters will find some issue with what that character is saying, or maybe things will get interesting in that first scene. And that's good. That's where the story comes from. That's not a bad thing at all. But, you do need to establish what their relationship is with this person and why they're having a conversation with them in the first place, and why this character's coming to them. Maybe they're Jump Rangers. That's the reason. But, why would they do they have a relationship with this person, or is this someone they've never met before? Are they trying to establish a good first impression on this person, or whatever the case may be? Talk through the details of, specifically the context of this story, how it fits into the lives of the Jump Rangers that are going on this adventure. That's the whole breakdown. That's all you have time for in a one shot. What's up, Ippy Looney? That's great. You like it? Ippy Looney has had Panda Express. Because whenever Ippy Looney tries to order Panda Express, I try to talk Ippy Looney into ordering better Chinese food. Every time. And Ippy Looney knows that I'm right, so they don't argue with me and just say, but I want Panda Express. Because we all know there's better Chinese food. But also Ippy Looney wants Panda Express. So tonight, Ippy Looney wanted to order Panda Express and wanted me to order with him. And I'm like, don't ask me to order with you. Just get the Panda Express that you want. Because if you ask me to order with you, I'm going to talk you into ordering something better. Because we live in a city with really good, in general, Asian cuisine, and in particular, not as great Chinese food, but still, come on. And Ippy Looney took my advice about not asking me to get in on that order. And as a consequence, Ippy Looney had Panda Express. So, the big picture of this story is something I'm going to talk through a little bit about. And it might just be that we don't really get past scene 1 or even setting up the story in this session. And that's okay, because I think this one shot is actually going to be kind of pivotal in terms of Jump Rangers development and the Jump Rangers narrative. So, this last week, on Monday, actually, I rewrote the mission file 1, which is a big. It's Ippy Looney. I like it. I got photobombed on my stream. Oh, I see. Okay. Saturday is metagame. Is the stream where Ippy Looney and I and Federico Estevao, who is the concept designer and art director of Jump Rangers, sit down and play some Jump Rangers. It's at 1:30 Pacific. If anybody wants to join us, please do. So I rewrote the Undersor Alliance, Mission File 1, which is a big chunk of the first kind of overarching narrative arc of Jump Rangers as a universe. And it ties into what's going on with Conquest, a game called Conquest, which is the novel that I'm writing right now. And there's going to be the Mission File 2 is going to be the supplement for a game called Conquest. We're going to talk through how players get involved in the battle for Earth and how that actually happens, and how the fight goes down with not just the Saurian Horde on Earth, but also with Admiral Paxis, who's trying to start a war with Soros. So the Saurian Alliance sets up Paxis's war, and a game called Conquest kind of shuts it down. In Undersor Alliance, Paxis is developing carriers and carrier fleets with jump drives, which up until that moment in the history of the Jump Rangers universe have not existed for humans. We have been forced to steal our interstellar transportation from the Saurians and the Loom, which is kind of a major conceit of the Jump Rangers universe. And Paxis builds a carrier and a fleet that supports the carrier, and even the smaller ships in the fleet. There's a couple of Argos gunships, and there's a couple of Hermes transports that have jump drives. And he does this because I don't want to spoil the game, but he gets the resources to reverse engineer some of the technology. He gets help from the Undersoars, hence Undersoar Alliance, and off he goes. I've felt compelled, and even he goes so far as to start building ships with scout ships for Jump Rangers who are willing to help him. A limited number of them, but player characters can get their hands on a jump drive. Does this unmake the core conceit of Jump Rangers? Right? And the answer is a little bit maybe, but something compelled me to leave it in there. And it was one of those creative impulses that you don't necessarily want to argue with. So I left it in there. And every morning I do a couple pages of just maybe diary writing or whatever you want to call it, but just sort of stream of consciousness stuff. And I was like, why am I leaving this in there? Why is this a thing that's useful for the Jump Rangers universe? I think this kind of breaks the game, doesn't it? How does this not break the game? And the answer to my question from inside my brain or wherever was because jump drives are broken because they're bad for the environment. And somebody's going to have to do something about it. We're not going to want to build more of them. We're not going to want to use the ones we have. Okay. How does that turn out to be the case? Well, the technology that powers human civilization right now was stolen from the Saurian Horde. We take these octonium crystals and we build octonators. We even build weapons out of them. We build octonium missiles that we use against the Saurian Horde. The Saurians and the Loom both power their entire interstellar empires with these octonators using octonium crystals, which are obviously a fantastic thing that I just made up. But what if we're dumb for copying the tools and the resources of these extremely destructive alien space empires? What if octonators are the problem? And to what degree would human beings even want to do something about that? To what degree would the colonists who are out there struggling to survive just say, well, screw it. We didn't invent this technology. We didn't start the fire. It's not our fault, and just move on with their plans for the galaxy. My life is hard enough. I don't need to be worrying about the structure of space-time kind of thing. So, I think an interesting idea would be to tell a story about a team of Jump Rangers who are responding to a sudden upswelling of Saurian activity. A bunch of motherships are going to this one system that nobody's really heard of before, that no Ranger has ever been to, because of a supernova, because the star is exploding. And why is the star exploding? Well, it's going to turn out that this whole star system is, is a weapons testing site. And the Saurians have been testing octonium super weapons because, as fate would have it, octonium and the technology that we build, octonium itself is perfectly harmless. Octonium is, a generator for sort of benign radiation in the galaxy. You've got tons of octonium on planet Rock, and the Rockman people live on it, right? So it's potent, but it's not inherently bad. But when you start messing with octonium, it draws dark matter in. And so the Saurians have been deliberately experimenting on how much you have to push that and how much octonium you actually have to mess with until it draws so much dark matter in that it creates a black hole. It just creates so much mass that it implodes and punches a hole in the universe. And the answer is less than you'd think. And all of these octonators and all of this technology all around the galaxy is drawing dark matter and increasing gravitational pull and creating a scenario where it's a lot easier for black holes to just appear. And Saurian scientists are studying the work being done at this weapon testing facility. Of course, they're thrilled. This is the result they were looking for. But what we learned from this is that octonators are, in fact, inherently destructive to the structure of the universe. And, I think having a mission where kids are finding this out and kids are taking responsibility for what that means, while maybe grown-ups aren't as interested in hearing anything about it, could be, very relevant. And it could be very powerful. Could be something that kids benefit from playing through and from getting involved in. So heady stuff, deep a little bit, but also kind of very much an allegory on what's going on in our world, you know. And there are going to be some kids who say, "Screw it, I don't care. I'll take the ship from, Fort Paxis. I'll fly a marathon, and it's okay. It'll be fine. Someone else can deal with this in the future." But, as a whole, I think the Jump Rangers would say, who is going to deal with this in the future? There's the jump rule, which says when something needs to be done, you just do it. You don't argue about it. You don't procrastinate. You get the thing done. I think that it's a good ethical question, and inherently, it puts the Jump Rangers in a position where they do not want to proliferate jump drives as they are currently used, because they're all powered in the same way. It's all the same stuff, and I think that's going to be the thing that puts pressure on puts pressure on the universe and keeps things contained, is that the Jump Rangers are actually trying to lead humanity towards a sustainable, good, reasonable future. And yeah, it's too much to ask for kids to be the ones to solve these problems. These are grown-up problems. But grown-ups get stuck in their ways, and they get comfortable with the tools at their disposal, and they get really, really angry when you try to take those tools away from them. So it's going to be the kids who have to deal with our environmental liabilities, because the grown-ups would rather pretend or gaslight themselves into thinking that the power they have is righteous. Anyway, I don't have a name for this yet. I think we just call it dark matter. If that's not a double meaning, I don't know what is. I like it. All right, so the big picture. Octonators are a source of power octonators are generators that harness the power and radiation of octonium crystals that harness the radiation of octonium crystals to power technology. Stealing the technology from the Saurian Horde and from the Saurian Empire and the Loom. Humans have used octonators to fuel, to drive every aspect to power. Just about every aspect of human civilization. What would happen if it turned out that the ways that the use of octonium in the Saurian Horde was destructive to the environment? What would that mean for human civilization? One of the other things that I like about this is that it kind of opens the door to the question of, is there ever a perfect solution, and do we ever stop iterating? You know, it's a little bit of a condemnation to the question of good enough. You know, octonium generators are something that we inherently trust because it's science fiction language. We sort of assume, okay, well, they've come up with a perfect solution. No, it's just another solution. It's another imperfect solution in a long chain of imperfect solutions. And now we've found the limitations, and they're urgent, and they need to be addressed. Do we say, but that's not our job? I like it. So, setting up the story. I think this is another mission that is going to wind up leaving from Pax's base on Link. This is something that Pseudopaxis would be curious about if there's all this mothership activity. Plus, you know, if the Saurians are developing octonium weapons of mass destruction, if they are developing those kinds of weapons, then it's going to be the Loom that they use them against. I don't know if they would use them on Planet Link, but it would immediately concern Pseudopaxis. You know, I think that it's more likely the Saurians would use these weapons in systems where the Loom are not fighting the Saurians, where there's nothing that the Saurians need, because the Loom are able to survive in environments that don't have air or, or or that meet their biological needs, because they don't have biological needs anymore. So the Loom can thrive in places where the Saurians have no need to go. But if the Saurians just started wiping out those areas, but what's it going to mean if if the sort of fabric of the universe itself is just getting weaker because of everything that we do? there's a couple of science fiction precedents for this. This is not a new idea. Um, and one thing that I found about Jump Rangers is that it's the perspective of the kids that makes everything feel unique and alive, right? It's not that the idea of a space whale is new, or that the idea of a space mouse is new, or even space dinosaurs, or any of it. The iconography of Jump Rangers is something I think that immediately is recognizable on some level, but it becomes its own because we're seeing it all through the eyes of children. That's what makes it special. So, I've seen this idea um, that we're using power sources that are somehow bad for the environment. There was a Star Trek episode in Voyager um, where the use of warp drives was eroding, or no, it wasn't. It was the Next Generation. Was the use of warp drives was eroding the fabric of space time, and then there was also I had a really good example of exactly what this is. Oh, of course, it was Star Trek 6 when they blow up the Klingon planet. There's a little bit of a piece of that here too, where the Saurian Horde is creating phenomena, natural disasters, or accidents, industrial accidents of such magnitude that they're showing up on telescopes, kind of thing. Um, so I'm not claiming this is some kind of new idea. I just think I think it opens the door for kids to reckon with adult problems, and to do so in a fantastic setting where they still have power over them, but they have to keep doing harder and harder things. You okay, Ippy Looney? All right. Um, I tell you what, we're going to call it a day. I'm going to come back and work on this next week. Thank you very much for watching. Um, half an hour is good. This is a strong start. We've gotten the basic idea on paper. We'll come back and revisit this. Thank you very much to everybody who's joining me, and I will see you next week. We'll do this. We'll finish this up. It's going to take 2 or 3 weeks anyways. There's no reason not to pace ourselves, and I will catch you then. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.